Thanks for joining today. My name is Carl. I'm a Bob Ross certified painting instructor. I thought today we'd do one of my own creations, Crimson and Calm. It's a beautiful mountain scene with some great colors. I think you'll really like it. If you're interested in art supplies or Bob Ross products, you can check out my affiliate links in the description below. If you're enjoying my content, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps my channel grow. Let's go up to the canvas. We have our standard 16 by 20 canvas. I've covered it in a very thin coat of liquid white. Liquid white is wet. Here are the paint colors that I will be using for this painting. I have a 1-inch brush and I went into a little bit of Prussian blue. I'm just doing X strokes, kind of going into the corners. And because we have the liquid white on there, we can move and slide paint, makes it a lot easier. And then here I'm just adding some indications of some water later on in the painting. So just some horizontal strokes, generally moving from outside to in towards the center of the canvas. And then you can see here I'm adding a little bit of alizarin crimson with the Prussian blue, kind of a purplish color. And I'm going to put that color in the center of the sky and maybe a little bit into the water. I'm just continuing to do the X strokes to soften, remove some of the brush strokes. I do think leaving some of the streaks into the sky just adds to some of the details, creates some nice illusions in your sky. So here you can see I'm just continuing to work the sky and then horizontal strokes to just soften it at the very end. With a fan brush and some titanium white, I'm just using the corner of the brush and doing just little circular motions. And really think of the top edge of the clouds. Just think of the form and the shape, doing those little motions. And notice I'm leaving a little bit of sky showing through it. I think that helps add some realism to the clouds. And then here with a 1-inch brush, very soft, very, very small portion of the brush, light pressure, wisping the base of the clouds. And then here I'm just fluffing, kind of doing a C motion. And then very soft, go across. And that simply we have a happy little cloud. And then over here I'm going up into the top portion. Again, you can see I'm tilting the brush using the corner. And again, just thinking of the shape of the cloud. Thinking of the shape and the lay of the cloud. Floating in the sky, having a good time. And here I'm kind of, if you notice, I'm kind of stringing the clouds towards the center. And then here back to the 1-inch brush. Very, very softly, focusing on the base, and then wisp. And you can have so much fun with the clouds, add so many layers in your pictures. And I'm just softening using very light pressure. And thinking of layering, here's another cloud that I put in right underneath the main cloud. Just again using those circular strokes, thinking of the top edge and shape of the cloud. Wisping, floating away, and then back to the 1-inch brush, very soft. And then we'll fluff that as well. Just some gorgeous clouds. Look how quickly we can create a beautiful sky with some clouds, some nice colors, and then we'll move on to the mountain. So the mountain, just a mixture of black, some Prussian blue, Van Dyke brown, a little bit of alizarin crimson, looking for a dark mixture, basically. And with a little roll of paint, I'm really looking for the top edge of the mountain. So really scrubbing the paint. We want to get that pigment into the canvas. But all I care about is that top edge. And then I am removing excess paint. So really scraping, you can hear the sound. And then with a 1-inch brush, again, you can use a 2-inch brush. I'm really grabbing, pressing, and sliding. That's the beauty of the liquid white. We can move paint. And I really want to start shaping my mountain. And you can think of highlights and shadows during this stretch. Start to think of the lay of the land. But I want to really soften out the dark color. And then towards the base, you can see I'm just really mixing with some of the colors, the liquid white, creating a little softness down towards the base. And here you can see me, I'm shaping it. Now, with the knife, titanium white, you could add a hint of bright red, but not much, mostly white. And let the canvas take what it wants. Little roll of paint. And then as you go down the mountain, I'm dropping the handle and going to the right. And you can feel the paint grab. If your paint is too oily or too thin, it does make it harder to get the paint to break. So having a stiffer paint does help. So again, I'm just lightly touching, no pressure, no pressure. Sometimes you might even miss the canvas. That's how light it is. Like a whisper. And I'm just thinking of the lay of the land. My highlights are coming from the right. And here we got some little peaks. We don't want to leave them out. Just poking around. And then we're dancing the highlights as the light would cascade. I really enjoy painting mountains. They just make me happy. When you paint, you should paint what makes you happy. And those, look at the clouds in the distance, they have a great view. And then with the shadow color, a little Prussian blue, a little black, a little bit of white. It's kind of a medium blue color. And I'm using the small part of the knife just to put in some indications. Notice I left some of the base mountain color to come through. Again, I think that adds to some depth with your picture. So I don't want to cover all of it. But again, you can use the full blade of the knife. I like the small blade for shadows. Personally, I just feel like it gives a lot more control as I get into the small nooks and crannies. Just light pressure, very soft. I probably have a little less paint with shadows than I do with the highlights, my preference. And then here I am using the full blade, and this peak is sticking out, so I thought, I can get in there a little bit easier. So just putting some nice indications of some shadows. Notice the shadows are flowing down towards the left. Highlights are going towards the right. And then here I'm dancing back with some highlights just to put some finishing touches. And then 1-inch brush or 2-inch brush, I'm tapping at the base, ever so soft. Now thinking of the flow of the mountain, you want to stay with that flow. And I'm just creating that mist. So flowing up and just softening the base, and then tapping and lifting on the left side as well with the shadows. And that quickly we have a happy, powerful mountain. And then with a little bit of the base color and white, so the base mountain color and white, kind of a nice blue, medium blue color, I'm creating just some very subtle indications of some foothills. Most of these will be covered, you won't see them. And then notice I'm lifting up here and there. Maybe there's some distant trees or things like that. We're just creating some illusions. We might see a very small percentage of these foothills, but it's just good practice, and a few of them might show through. So lifting up. Again, in your world, you can leave these out, you can put in more. And here I'm mixing up a little bit of the dark color, so that same foothill color with a little bit more black. And then I brought in a little bit of the phthalo green. Very small hint. It's still kind of a bluish medium color. I want this to be less contrasty because it is farther away. And I'm just creating a section of bushes and trees, kind of in the middle ground. And again, 1-inch brush, I'm just tapping here and there. And then fan brush, I'm adding in some evergreen trees. So touch for the trunk, and then using the right corner of the brush, start working down, adding more pressure as you go down the tree. For reflections, the 1-inch brush or 2-inch brush works well. Pulling the color straight down, very important. And I am putting some indications with the fan brush, just for reflection. You don't have to be super precise, but it creates a really nice illusion. And this is a clean 1-inch brush that I soften the reflections. Now here I'm going to highlight. I just took some of that blue color, the base color, and added some cadmium yellow. So it created a beautiful green. And with the fan brush, I'm just creating some highlights, maybe some distant grasses in this section of the painting. Just soft, just touching with the fan brush. Again, leaving some dark areas. And then here I'm pulling down some of the green color. Again, creating that illusion of the reflection. Don't need much, just here and there, adding a few more grasses. Some of these on the side will be covered with some trees and stuff. So I'm just kind of focusing more towards the center area. Beautiful. Now with the half round, I don't use this one too often, but I really enjoy it. Loading into some of the different yellows and green tones. And I'm just tapping, kind of tilting the brush upward if you notice. Just some subtle greens and yellows. Tap, tap, tap. Ooh, I'm adding a little bit of alizarin crimson. So we have a purplish color here. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that. Save the darks. And notice it's not too contrasty back here. I want it to be a little bit more subtle. And then I am reflecting some of that color into the water. I'd really encourage you to try the half round. It's a really fantastic brush, especially for bushes, trees. It does a great job. And then with a clean brush, very soft. But look at that reflection. Look at how pristine that reflection is. And I took a little bit of white with some black to make a gray color. And I'm just putting some indications of a water line. I like using the gray color in the background. I think it mutes the water line a little bit more. So very, very nice middle ground underneath the mountain. Just a great view. You could go fishing on the lake. And then with a very dark color. So this color was black, a little Prussian blue, a little bit of phthalo green, Van Dyke brown, and alizarin crimson. Mostly a dark color. And we're moving forward, so I want that to really stand out. So again, tap the trunk, right corner of the brush, start thinking like a tree, and then I'm adding more pressure, branching out a little bit more as I go down. Just some happy trees, happy evergreen trees. And then I'm going to start shaping in the bushes in the shape of this more foreground area. And here I have the 1-inch brush just to punch in some bushes. And then I'm thinking of the reflection. So straight down, getting a little bit more dark color. Make sure it's straight down, very important. And then with a clean brush, I'm just going across the reflection. We'll bring some highlights in there. And then I'm going to start on the right side. Put in some happy evergreen trees. Just right side of the brush. And I'm tapping in a big tree here. This is going to be a big one overlooking this whole scene. Has a great view. If you're also interested, I've been considering doing some acrylic paintings. I know it's not the Bob Ross style, but let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do some acrylic paintings. I also could do some paintings in Procreate on the iPad. Maybe for those who don't have supplies or prefer the digital world, I can certainly give that a go. So let me know if you're interested in that. Maybe do some Bob Ross style paintings in acrylic and on the iPad. Here I am I'm increasing the size of that evergreen tree. I thought it was a little tiny, so I wanted to make it a little bigger. We have the power in our world. And then a little tiny tree. We got some friends there as well. And then I'm going to start shaping in some of those bushes. With the reflection, again, pull straight down. And then here you notice I'm gonna add a little bit more out into the water. I wanted it a little farther out. As you paint, you'll see these things, make adjustments. And then here's a clean brush, very soft. And then with the knife and a little bit of the brown colors and white, just tapping in some indications of some of the trunks. Again, we won't see too much when we do highlights, but just some indications here and there. And I'm just very light, I'm essentially just touching the canvas. I'm not really doing much. Let the canvas take what it wants. And then here I have a little bit of with the dark color from the trees and cadmium yellow for the highlights. It makes a beautiful green. And if you need to thin it down, very important, you can add some thinner. I use walnut oil. Just some gorgeous highlights. Leave some of the dark coming through. I'm a really big fan of the Bob Ross evergreen trees. It makes me really, really happy when I paint those. Now, half round. I'm going to go into some variations of some yellows, some of the purple colors, and again, thin your paint to help it stick. And I love the control of the half round. So I'm just using the corner and I'm tapping very light pressure. I'm not using too much pressure. There I'm going up into a yellow color here, little cad yellow. And by mixing the colors, changing it, it just gives you such a variety. And then what I do when I'm done with each of the bushes, I try to bring some of it back into the water. So you'll notice I'm just actively bringing some of those colors down into the reflections. And I think that'll help a little bit later on. So you can see I'm tilting that brush upward using the very top edge. And it creates some beautiful effects. Lots of little details. Really vary the colors. And you can have so much fun. Put whatever colors that makes you happy. Change it up. You could change the seasons. I was in the mood for these pink colors. And you do not have to add these into the reflections as well. You don't have to. But I do think it does add to a little bit more realism. Oh, look at that bush. Beautiful. Right down to the water's edge. Some nice reflections. And then we'll add some more of that color onto the other side. Some nice pink. And on the palette, I'm really just tapping this. How I paint on the canvas, I'm tapping onto the palette the same way to load the brush. Kind of that, focusing on that top edge. And with very light pressure, clean brush, just ever so slightly pulling down the paint, and then 2 hairs and some air. Go across horizontally. I can't tell you how light a pressure. It's such a light amount of pressure. And then the same with the other side. Whisper, and then go across. And it's important to pull from the outside inward. Don't start in the center, because we'll bring in some of that extra color where we don't want it. And then here I'm going to add a little bit of some of the brown color and white. Create a little sandy indication. Maybe a little shoreline, somewhere where the bushes can sit. I really enjoy doing these shorelines as well. I just think it brings together all this foreground. And here I'm adding a little bit of Van Dyke brown just to darken some of that. And I'll do the same on the other side as well. And then with some white, little roll of paint, and I'm going to start bringing in some of the waterline. It's a little brighter than the middle ground with the waterline there. I find this straight white just pops and brings the water to life. And then here I'm adding just some indications of some ripples, things happening on the water. And then with the knife, I'm going to cut in some sticks and twigs, add some nice details. And with that, we have ourselves a finished painting, and I'm going to sign it. That was a really fun painting. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out my website at carlvonartistry.com. Happy painting. See you next time.